Hello everyone, and welcome to the second workshop out of 2 workshops in our listening bundle. In the first workshop we looked at listening activities, and in this workshop we're looking at the listening environment. So in session 1 I shared with you the stages of listening and how listening skills benefit later learning, and how to also effectively involve young children in listening activities. In this session, we're going to look more specifically at a listening challenge that affects many young children at a critical time in their development when their communication skills are really developing. So just a reminder from session 1 that Ofsted's Best Start in Life research showed us that more developed language and communication is associated with better emotional well-being, and that frequent high quality interactions are fundamental for our young children. But gluea is one of many things that can get in the way of young children acquiring language, and it can also get in the way of curriculum access. So as I mentioned in session 1, we could have the best provision and the best practice in the whole world, but if children can't hear us, then they're not accessing it unless we make some adjustments to support them. So in this session, we'll look at how to get our environments in tip-top condition for listening. And I'll use the phrase listening environment, I'll use the phrase acoustics, I'll use acoustic environments that all mean the same thing. So, teachers of the deaf quite like to give you the experience of being deaf so that you can understand the challenges. Here's a little gap task for you. You might want to pause this video and go and do it now, or you might want to save it till later. Go and find these YouTube clips. The first one is the Flintstones. If you just search in YouTube Flintstones hearing loss, that will bring up the clip for you. That will give you an experience of what it's like to listen with a mild, moderate, severe or profound deafness. And that's about listening to speech. And the second video is a music video of a band singing and playing a song called Hear the World, which is a really lovely song, and that gives you the experience of listening to music with mild, moderate, severe or profound hearing. And I just wanted to give you those 2 experiences so that you have a sense of how speech and how music sounds when you have partial hearing or profound deafness. And also I wanted to make the point that the way that we receive speech and the way that we receive music sounds are very different. So our body is a resonant chamber, and music can be picked up in our whole body, can't it? Whereas speech can't really. So speech sounds rely on ears or the use of visuals to support it, whereas music can still be enjoyed if you're deaf, it's just enjoyed differently. So remember the speech banana that I showed you last time, and the different levels of hearing on that diagram. It's quite difficult to fully represent and therefore experience the challenges of deafness because everybody's deafness is different, but the speech banana does help us with a visual representation of that. So today we're just going to be thinking about gluea specifically, because 80% of children under 10 years will experience gluea, and these are the signs that help us to spot that it's happening. And if we suspect by noticing any of these signs that gluea might be present, then to get it either diagnosed or eliminated from our lines of inquiry, then we need to ask parents to request that children are seen by their GP. And then the GP or the child's health visitor or the school nurse can refer on to audiology. So just a little bit more about the identification of gluea. GPs often will say that it's congestion, and they'll recommend a period of watchful waiting, which is usually around 3 months. Now, glue ear is often temporary, but long-term infections can cause speech delays and can cause further damage to the ears, because what happens is that fluid gets into your eustachian tube, which is back here. And in the case of glue ear, that's fluid that hasn't drained away when you've had a cold or you've been a bit congested. And that creates, it sort of compacts, and it means then the air can't get through the middle ear, because the middle ear cells are producing fluid, which are causing congestion. So that's what's creating the barrier to the sound getting into the cochlea and the child being able to hear. Here's the lovely speech banana that we've enjoyed looking at in our previous sessions. So a really good visual representation of the way that our ears work or don't work. So remember, the pitch of a sound is represented here across the top from left to right, like piano keys. So on the left we've got the low sounds, and on the right we've got the high sounds, and the middle sounds are known as mid-frequency sounds. I like to think of middle C. That's a mid-frequency sound. And then from top to bottom, we've got the loudness levels, with the quietest sounds at the top and the loudest sounds at the bottom. And then you can see on the right hand side the different types of deafness are listed here. Just as an aside, I use the term deaf just to cover all types of deafness. But if you are someone who has partial hearing or no hearing, it's up to you how you define your own ability to hear. So I use deaf as an umbrella term, but some people would say that they are small d deaf. Some people would say that they are capital D deaf, and those people usually have sign language as their first language. Other people prefer to be called hard of hearing. Some people who were born with hearing but lost their hearing are happy to say that they have hearing loss. Partial hearing is another umbrella term that we can use, but there are some people who don't like the term hearing impaired, because that implies that they are missing something that other people have. And there are some people who feel very strongly that deafness is part of their identity, their culture, and they don't think that there is anything missing. So just be careful with hearing impaired term. In fact, I would just strongly recommend you ditch that term from your vocabulary, and ask the family of the child what terminology that they are using. Back to the speech with banana then. Have a look at the minimum level for hearing protection down at the bottom in red. I'm going to refer to that a bit later on. So glue ear usually causes a temporary mild deafness, and I've just popped a simple red line across this audiogram to highlight to you where the mild levels of hearing are. So you can see already the quieter speech sounds and the quieter environmental sounds like bird song and tap stripping and watches ticking can't be picked up by somebody who has a mild hearing issue. Just to point out, I don't think I've ever seen a flat line across an audiogram. That's very, very rare. Usually audiograms are a bit more up and down than that. So if you have glue ear, and I'm sure that some of you will have had this yourself, you'll have had this experience, then you're congested, and that muffles sounds, and particularly the sound of your own voice, which can be quite disorientating. You can suffer from headaches because it's increasing your sensitivity, and then loud noises, background noise, sudden noises can actually be eye-wateringly painful. If a child is born with cleft palate or has a syndrome like Down syndrome, they tend to have a smaller eustachian tube, which reduces the function of that eustachian tube and leaves them more vulnerable to glue ear as well. So the legal bit around glue ear. If you're working in a school, then glue ear is a medical condition, which means that in law you're required to support the child because it's a medical condition. So ask parents for a copy of the child's audiogram. Ask to be copied in whenever reports are produced from the audiologist. Use that audiogram, interpret it using the speech banana, because that will show you which speech sounds and which environmental sounds are being missed, and use that information to create your listening activities. So children will need visual reinforcement of the sounds that they can't hear, and if you need any support with this, then I can help you. Just get in contact. So keep the audiogram and the speech banana on file, and share this information along with the adaptations that you've made for the child when they transition, because their next teacher will thank you for it. We're putting a resources pack together for you with all of this information in it, and that will be sent out to you when you've completed the evaluation form at the end of the training. There's a QR code on the last slide, so look out for that. So background noise is another listening challenge for our learners, and there are recommended standards set out by the British Association of Teachers of the Deaf, and building regulations actually set out in law what certain buildings should have in place to optimise listening. Sadly, many new settings are still being built in breach of these laws, so we end up having to retrofit adjustments to make them acoustically friendly for our learners. So here's what you can do. You can check your settings noise levels by standing in your setting before or after the children have come to the setting. So when they've gone home, maybe at the end of the day, and check, is there any consistent background noise that needs to be dealt with? Heating, ventilation, air conditioning, the noise from other buildings attached to yours, traffic outside maybe. Specialists can come in and measure this for you, and I'll share some information later on about some specialists that I've worked very closely with who will do these types of audits for you for free, so I'll share that with you in a minute. And then when the children are in during session, think about the conversational levels of sound that are happening around you. So does everyone have to raise their voice above the conversational level of sound in order to be heard? And how often is this happening? Because it's very tiring for our listeners to have to listen to this, and also for us to have to consistently raise our voices. So we need speech to be approximately 15 decibels louder than background noise for it to be heard properly. So if background noise is loud and we need to raise our voices, then that creates a strain on us as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about reverberation now, and again this can be measured by specialists who can come out to you for free and measure this for you. And again, there are legal set times for how sound travels around rooms, especially classrooms. Everyone's going to experience challenges with tuning into sound and listening properly if there's a lot of reverberation and echo in a room, and we call that poor acoustics. So rooms that have got hard surfaces, like large painted walls that aren't covered with anything soft, glass windows, tiled floors, wooden floors, high ceilings, these all make sound bounce around, and that distorts what you hear. So how does it work if we've got all this lovely planning and all these amazing professionals and practitioners and wonderful continuous provision, if a child's experiencing listening challenges because they've got temporary or permanent deafness, and there's background noise and there's reverberation, it's really challenging. So just take a moment to consider, when you're chatting with a child or with a few children, like round the table at snack time or round the fire pit outside, can they hear you? Can you hear them? How can you tell? We often make changes in the moment, and you'll see this if you're observing yourself practicing or somebody else. You'll see the little tweaks that we do moment by moment to support a good listening environment. So we might turn to ask other people nearby to talk more quietly. Doing things like that also creates a good listening environment, because we are modelling how to advocate for a good listening environment, and children are watching and they're learning that from us. So we might get up and close the door, or we might change our position or the child's position so that we're face to face. And it's okay in a noisy room to just gently tap a child's shoulder, or to wave at a deaf person to get their attention, to say their name and just give a pause before you give the next bit of information, making sure that you have got their attention. So those are all things that you can do in the moment, and here's some things that you can do ahead of time. So soften the furnishings around your learning environment, inside as well as outside. You can put rubber tips, or there's a product called Hush Ups that you can put on the bottom of chairs and table legs. If you've got uncarpeted floors, chairs and table legs can make scraping noises that are really distracting. Put rugs down, put tablecloths on tables to stop the banging of noisy activities like construction toys, or in the home corner. We like our wooden equipment in the early years, don't we? And sometimes the role play area, the home corner, can be really quite noisy. So think about putting down some heavy carpet or some tablecloths. Planting trees outside also softens the acoustics for us. In terms of background noise, we can plant hedges. We can put solid fences in to reduce the external noise of traffic. Sorry if you can hear my husband coming home and the dogs greeting him. I'm going to tune out that sound and carry on talking to you. We can put furniture like bookshelves against walls, and we can put outdoor furniture against slatted fences to reduce noise coming through from the other side. It's important to reduce competing noise as well, so turning off radios and TVs when you're trying to talk to children, and when you're outside, moving away from noisy areas, or even just highlighting it. Yes, the juniors are having their football game in the field next door. I can hear that. And here's what I'm saying to you. So you're teaching children to habituate to noisy sounds and park them, essentially, so that they can focus on what you are saying. Talk to children ahead of time about risks and hazards and what safety signals that you're going to be using, like the Green Cross code, stop, wait, we go together, before moving into noisy areas or crossing roads. And then think about where and when you have your noisy activities and how you will communicate that with the children. In terms of voices, we can encourage other children to think about the noises they're making with their voices and their toys. We can create quieter areas for children to play in, so that they know they can use that strategy of getting away from noise. And we can explicitly teach inclusion. So by being deaf aware ourselves, we're modelling that, aren't we, for children? But we can also be really super explicit about the language we use around inclusion by saying, oh, I don't like it when you shout, or I don't like it when there's lots of children playing in the shed outside, it's too noisy, or he or she can hear you when you talk face to face, or he can't hear you when he's got sunlight behind him because they can't see your lip patterns, or oh, that was a very loud noise, or a quiet noise, or I like that, it's a comfortable noise. Just giving children the language to be able to talk about sound. So early years noise levels research, there is such a thing, it exists, tells us that indoors in the early years, in our nurseries, the sound levels are often up at 80 decibels. Now, if you remember the speech banana and how loud that is, that's loud. And then outdoors voices can be up to 90 decibels. Remember that minimum level for hearing protection on the speech banana. But there's less reverberation outside, so it's less of a complex listening environment. In fact, woodland is the best listening environment, as long as it's not right next to the M25. Think library Think bedroom sound levels. Woodland, library, bedroom is what we're aiming for in terms of comfortable listening environment. So just take a moment to think about what the impact is when we improve acoustics for the child, and what's the impact for us. So I just paused for ever so slightly longer than was comfortable there, just to give you a sense of that impact when listening levels are comfortable. So be deaf aware, expect the children around you to be deaf aware, teach it. Deaf awareness is about talking face to face. It's about facing the light, not having the light behind you. It's about using visuals, using gestures, and using your facial expression to support the speech that you're using. Advocate for good listening levels. Teach children to advocate, and explicitly teach everybody to say what the listening environment is like for them, so that then you can make the changes that are needed. Storybooks are one of the most evidence-based approaches for everything we want children to learn. So you could focus some of your storybooks on teaching the children strategies for inclusion, and these are some of the books that I've used as a teacher of the deaf. These are in the pack for you. If you've got children in your setting who've been prescribed hearing aids, then you could support them along with their parents to build up their use of hearing aids. If you need any support with this, or with using any devices that children are given by audiology, then do get in contact, because I can help you. And then all of this information again is in the pack that you'll get when you complete the feedback form. So Roberts Audio Solutions are based in Taunton, not too far from where we all are. They're happy to travel across the southwest to come out and do free audits of your provision. So we did this at Ham Drive Nursery, and they fitted these lovely acoustic clouds for us because I got funding from Access to Work because of my deafness. There are other funding bodies for children who have listening challenges, and the Birkdale Trust is one of them. Again, that's all in the pack that we're sending out to you at the end of the training. So just stepping aside from acoustics and stepping aside from the research for a minute, let's just have a think about how deafness impacts on mental health and well-being. We know that without support, deafness can be alienating for our learners, and the impact of that is social exclusion, which we know can lead to emotional challenges. So the Anna Freud resource on the left here talks about creating emotional well-being amongst our deaf learners, and the National Deaf Children's Society resource on the right is one of many resources on their website that's free. They often have webinars for free, and they have huge amount of resources for parents which are also relevant for us. Again, there's links to these documents in your pack. And then locally, there are teams of service providers for learners with sensory challenges. So you will have a local team of teachers of the deaf who you can talk to and get advice from. This is the feedback form. So if you wouldn't mind scanning the QR code and filling out our very short survey and letting us know how you found this training, whether it was useful and how it will support you in your practice and provision, we'd be really grateful. Then we can get your information pack out to you. Thank you so much for coming along to this training. I hope it's been helpful. Bye.